Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, we're going to look at my Phalaenopsis Mini Tris. It's a primary hybrid. It's a cross between equestris and bellina. The funny thing about this one is that the label says that both parents are albiform, but somehow they come out with purple dots and purple lip, and some people told me that it may have been mislabeled, but I'm not really sure, but that's another topic of its own. This orchid was repotted, so today I'm just going to share with you why I repotted this orchid and why I did that, and some of the latest updates on this particular orchid. This orchid originally gave me 4 buds. The last bud did not open because I think I was in the middle of taking videos and taking photos of this orchid. Just too much moving around, and I think this orchid just did not like that. And so the last bud, it was really big, it was about to open, but then it blasted in the end. It's a pity, but I guess it's not too unusual for this orchid hobby. And the reason I repotted this orchid at the end of July was because, as you can see, there were so many roots in the air and it just took so much space, and the cup that I used was only an 8-ounce cup. It was very shallow. The reason I used that cup was because it didn't have good root system to begin with. But anyway, I soaked it first and then I took it out of the pot, and I obviously went through all the steps I could to clean the roots and the media. And then I also sprayed down the area roots so that the roots are soft enough for me to be able to gradually and gently push them into a 12-ounce cup. And then from there, I had to adjust the orchid a little bit, just so that it's growing or facing the angle or the direction that I wanted. And then from there, I just lightly add the sphagnum moss into the cup. And the moss was pre-soaked, but then before I add it to the cup, I always give it a good squeeze so that it's just moist. And the key to this growing method with no drainage hole is that there has to be a good balance between air and moisture and the amount of moss that you have in the cup. You cannot pack too much of the moss and too tightly in the cup, because all you have to do is to make sure that the orchid can still breathe while getting enough water and nutrients. Now, 2 weeks later, you can see that there is already growing root tips. I think there were 4 or 5, so that was super cool. I was thrilled that this orchid responded to this repot so fast, and I think it has to do with the fact that it's summertime and there is enough temperature, enough sunlight and humidity, and also, as you can see here, it's growing a new leaf at the time, so I was very happy. It's been a while since I used this method to try on some of my orchids, and one of the tips that I use for my own orchid when I repot orchids into this particular method is that after you finish repotting, the trick that I use to see whether I'm packing enough moss or too much moss is if you just blow air into the cup and see if the air or your breath is going into the cup. Because if it feels that the air is going into the cup and perhaps even coming out of the cup from the other side of the cup, then that really means that it should be okay, because the air is going through and coming back out. But if you feel like the air is immediately bouncing back once it touched the top of the media, then that probably means that the moss is packed too tightly, that it's very little air that could go into the media. Now this video clip is just to show you that, after a little bit over 2 weeks, there were new roots emerging already, and this orchid just took off. Right, there was no break in between. It did not get set back, and it just continued to grow. And I suspect that it has to do with the season as well. Summertime, good humidity, good temperature, and good sunlight. And then another 3 weeks have gone by. So this is around September 10th. You can see that the middle leaf, the newest leaf, has grown quite a bit. And you can also see that the roots are doing really well. The roots are growing into the media, and overall it's just was doing so well. And you can even see it toward the end of the cup right here. There was a new root. That was not one of the root that I saw, and so it's a new root. It's white because I use an outer cup to reduce sunlight to avoid algae formation, and that's why some of the new roots growing within the media is in that color, because it doesn't have any direct contact with the sun, so it doesn't produce any chlorophyll to be green. And the care that I give to this orchid really is I wait until the moss is completely dry. So that really means when I touch it, it needs to be super dry, super crispy, and then when I hold it in my hand, there should not be any additional weight from the water, from the moisture, and that's when I give this orchid water. And in my environment, that cycle tends to be about 7 to 10 days in summertime. And I give this orchid fertilizer every other watering, and the strength that I use is only a quarter strength fertilizer, the recommended dosage, a quarter of it, and it turns out to be around 150 parts per million. I currently have about 5 or 6 orchids grown in this particular method, sphagnum moss in a cup without drainage holes, and they're all doing really well. And I think the trick really is to make sure that there is enough air in there, and that you don't pack your moss too tightly, too firmly, so that way there is air exchange, but then also ventilation. And here I also want to share with you another orchid potted in this method. I don't think I've ever featured this particular orchid in any of my videos. I might have, but I can't remember. But if I haven't, that's because, I really am upset with this orchid. I bought this orchid when I was living in New York, and I think I was I put this one in water culture, not knowing how to take care of the orchid, and it basically had root rot, so it was set back greatly. But thankfully, with this method, this orchid grew lots of area roots. And then I decided to repot this orchid a couple months ago. What happened was many area roots were just taking up too much space around this orchid, or for orchids around this orchid. So I wanted to repot this orchid and use a bigger container. Obviously, I had to do all the repotting, go through all the repotting steps, but the key really is to spray down or somehow wet the area roots so that they're soft enough and not cause too much breakage during the process. And as you can see here, it's bouncing back so well, and lots of green growing roots, so it's really a good thing that we're seeing. And the reason that I'm touching the leaves here is to show you that originally, actually, the farthest leaf, the biggest leaf, was how big the orchid was when I got it. But then because of root rot, it got set back, so it was growing very, very tiny leaf. The leaf in between or underneath my finger, it was so tiny, right? But then in this method, with this method, this orchid bounced back and is now growing bigger leaves as we speak. So this is totally a good sign here. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this method. I think this method can also help orchid get back on track. If you want to give this method a try, it's best that you find a sick orchid or a cheap orchid, so that way you know how to strike a good balance between the roots and the amount of moss that you should put into the cup. Overall, I'm really pleased with the progress of these two orchids, and if they have any further good development, I will make sure I give you an update on them as well. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!